Killer replica.
A replica of what?
A ghost trap?
But I tell you what I did finish. I did finish Ghostbusters Afterlife. I've seen it at this point twice. I saw it in theaters, and then I saw it in preparation for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And that one was sort of an interesting experience because I didn't hate it. But there was a lot of things I didn't like about it. I did really like the change of scenery. When it first started, I was like, oh, thank God they're not just doing like the same thing over again. And then I got to the third act. But, I liked the idea of the house and the kids, and for a while I thought they handled the death of Harold Ramis pretty well. There's a lot of nitpicks I have with it. I don't really like the idea of Egon having a family. I feel like it's funnier to think that Egon is completely asexual and he only makes exceptions for slime, like in Ghostbusters 2. But, as far as like passing the torch, I guess it's a okay vehicle to do that with. But, like there's so many characters in that movie that I feel like don't need to be there. Like Finn Wolfhard does not need to be in that movie. He serves very little purpose. He just fixes the car. His girlfriend in the movie also just feels so extra. And, I felt like it was okay. I loved Paul Rudd's character. Paul Rudd was great in the movie. I liked the mom quite a bit. But it's in the third act where the movie just becomes a summary of the original Ghostbusters, whereas it's just the third act of the original movie again, and it's like, oh my God, I've seen this before. You did the same thing in the original. You did something pretty close in the sequel. It's literally the same thing in the video game. And then we're just doing Gozer and Zool and all that again, and it really brings down the movie for me. But I can't say that it's a bad movie. I think it's fine. I think it's an interesting jumping on point for kids. But as someone who, watched the original, it just feels like a rehash. Like, okay, I've seen this. And I really liked what they were doing with Harold Ramis's character, Egon, where he's playing chess and he's like, you never see him. And then when you see him at the very end, it, to me, felt really gross. Like, it just felt so exploitative. Like, it was supposed to... The scene was designed for people to be like, oh, it made me cry. It was so emotional. And it just felt very manipulative. And while I think the Harold Ramis CGI construction played a lot better than, say, Peter Cushing in Rogue One, I would rather have the Peter Cushing in Rogue One because it was just so jarring to see just such a weird, like, he looked like a PlayStation 3 character in that movie, where Harold Ramis, it just felt like kind of gross. But at least that happens quickly. I don't know, I had very mixed feelings about that movie, and the interesting thing about Ghostbusters Afterlife is I have no drive to rewatch that movie, the same way I have the drive to, of course, watch the original, but I don't even particularly like the second one all that much, but I have a drive to go revisit it because I love the characters. I don't love the characters in the remake. I think the little girl in the movie is kind of cute. I like Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd's probably, I think, like the only character in that movie that feels like a Ghostbuster. Or I guess the mom feels kind of like Ghostbuster-esque. But everything else just feels like, oh yeah, Stranger Things is popular. Let's try to capitalize on that. And, the first movie is so cynical and so dry, where the Afterlife feels very schmaltzy, very, very like, oh, it's about family. And it feels so weird when you're watching that in a Ghostbusters movie. I don't know. I don't hate it. It probably sounds like I hate it, but I don't hate it. It's fine. It's perfectly fine.